KitzurByte, ladies and the Minyan. I want to spend a few minutes today discussing a hot potato. Why aren't ladies counted as part of the 10 for a minyan? Also, why can't they lead services? Why can't they get aliyahs called up to the Torah and things of that nature? So like we mentioned in today's episode, the standardized prayer services that we have were created and instituted by the rabbis during the times of the Second Temple. And they exempted ladies from it. They said, ladies traditionally were always taking care of the children while the men were out working, and children can't be scheduled. When a child is hungry, they have to eat. When a diaper needs to be changed, you can't wait half an hour because the person changing the diaper is off in synagogue praying. And therefore, when they created all these rules and guidelines for how prayer should look, then they said, we're only going to require the men to be involved in this formalized prayer. Ladies also need to pray. However, their prayer is much more limited. It could be said much quicker, much smaller amount, and they don't have the whole obligation of being with a minyan, etc. They're exempt from. We're not going to include them in this new decree of this formalized prayer that we're creating. Now we have a rule in Judaism that person A is able to help person B fulfill his obligation. For example, generally speaking, by most Shabbos meals, one person makes kiddush, and they include everybody at the table with their kiddush. There's a mitzvah for everyone to make kiddush, but one person is able to do that mitzvah on behalf of everybody else. There are a lot of rules and details how this exactly works with kiddush, and when we get to Shabbos, we'll talk about it then. But this is a general rule. When the person blowing the shofar is helping everybody in the shul fulfill their mitzvah of blowing the shofar. We saw over the past few days that if there are some blessings I'm not sure if I'm required to make it or not, then I can have my friend make it and I say amen, and it's as if I said that blessing as well. Now we have a rule about this. Only someone who's obligated in the mitzvah could help his friend fulfill that mitzvah. So for example, a child who's beneath 13 or a girl beneath 12, they can't help me fulfill a mitzvah. They cannot say kiddush on my behalf because they themselves don't have that mitzvah. We find this with prayer itself. Who can we count as part of the 10 for the minyan? So we know we cannot count a boy under 13 or a girl under 12. But I'm going to tell you another category of somebody who can't count. When an immediate relative passes away, God forbid, somebody's parent, a sibling, a child, or a spouse passes away, from the time period that the death happens until the burial, that person is called an onain. And there are many mitzvahs that they're not allowed to do, or they're not supposed to be involved in. One of those mitzvahs is prayer. An onain, somebody in an onain state, does not pray. Because they now are in an onain state, they cannot be counted as one of the 10 for the minyan. Since they don't have an obligation to pray themselves, they don't have this mitzvah of minyan themselves, therefore they cannot help other people there in the shul fulfill their obligation of minyan and of prayer. So they're not counted as part of the 10, they can't lead services, they can't get called up to the Torah, etc. So now with ladies as well. Even though ladies are invited to join a prayer service, they're able to come to a minyan 3 times a day, no problem, but we can't count them as part of the 10 for the minyan. Because since they don't have the obligation to do it, they're welcome to do it. It's amazing if they could do it. But since they don't have the obligation to do it, they can't help anybody else fulfill their own obligation either. There are also additional reasons why they can't lead services, which are beyond the scope of this discussion right now, but this reason alone, because part of the one leading the services is helping the community, the congregation, fulfill their obligation of prayer, at least in the standardized form, since ladies don't have that mitzvah, they can't help somebody else fulfill that obligation, so they can't lead services, they can't get called up to the Torah. Again, there are additional, more complex reasons, but this already is the initial reason why we can't count ladies as part of the 10 for a minyan and why they don't help in leading services, etc.